My parents taught me real estate. My mom used to, I'll never forget this. So back in the day, used to get checks or cash from the tenants. So my parents moved to Canada. When they moved here, they started building up some real estate stuff, landlords. And I'll never forget, my mom, at the beginning of every month, used to get me to count the cash. She used to get me to count her cash. Now, she never gave me any of it, but she used to get me to count it. So she used to always say money's easy to get. And, she was right. And she always had a great attitude around it. But she had a scarcity in her too, like a scarcity that I think kept her smaller. I think if my mom had some serious guidance, I think we would have unleashed an absolute beast into the world.
Hey, it's Rocky. Welcome to Rich Your Soul. Today's guest is Dave Conway, who will share universal laws that apply to everything.
Imagine it's 12 months from now, and you've achieved your major life goals. How does it feel to be in the best shape of your life? To wake up energized, excited about the day? To have great relationships and friends who support you and propel you forward? How does it feel to have an excess of money, to be able to make the choices you want? To be fearless and open to trying new adventures? Imagine being connected to the universe and it providing everything you desire. It's possible over time, and your past does not dictate your future. The only thing holding you back from this vision is you. It's time to take control of our thoughts and use them to our advantage. Welcome to Rich Your Soul, where we achieve our dreams and bring balance to health, wealth, relationships, time, and spirituality. If you have not had a chance to listen to episodes 1 through 9, I encourage you to go back and listen to the framework behind Rich Your Soul and how to create the life of your dreams. You can also find all the show notes for this episode at richyoursoul.com.
Do you think you can beat gravity? Sure, you can overcome it, but it's still there. The airplane's going to fall to Earth at some point. What if there are other universal laws that once you know them and you can learn to fly with them, you get to soar and live on your terms? Everything becomes easier. Your dreams become reality. That's a big promise, and it's our topic today. Dave Conway is regarded as the best-kept secret of personal development industry. He's the founder of Conway Consulting. Dave teaches entrepreneurs how to achieve any result they desire by developing their mind and living up to their life's full potential. He's an advocate for the practice of manifestation, which he studied under Bob Proctor at the Proctor Gallagher Institute. Between his coaching and public presentations, he has coached over 25,000 worldwide. Let's meet Dave and learn from him. Welcome to Rich Your Soul, Dave Conway. It's great to have you join us today.
Thank you, Rocky. Good to be here.
And I'm excited to learn from you today. We always like to start at the beginning. What was it like when you were growing up, and how much did your family and school teach you about money?
I was listening to a few of your podcasts before I jumped on today, so I knew that was coming. I wonder what the answer has been on what you find is the most common answer. But school, nothing.
Common answer.
Am I accurate there? School's nothing. School taught me nothing about money. Is that a common one for your guests?
It's very, very common.
Which is ridiculous, isn't it?
It is. And you know what's worst? I have a Bachelor of Science in Economics and an MBA. And so those are business money programs. And yet they don't teach you money. I'll take it a step further. My kids might disagree with me at times. I don't think school teaches you much of anything, especially the higher levels. I mean, once you get your basics of reading and writing down, the rest of it, they don't teach you how to live. That's for sure. They don't teach you how to create a life plan. They don't teach you how to critically think. And everything they teach you can now be answered by Google. Just my opinion.
So school, nothing. And family-wise, very interesting. My mother had a massive impact on my financial consciousness. My mom always said, money's easy to get. She always said that. Now, she never outright taught me how to earn money, but she always told me it was easy to get. So I was very familiar in my early adult life with debt. So I've never really, because of my mother, I've never stressed about money, but I was never able to create abundance of it. My parents worked very, very hard for the money that they had, but they never changed their consciousness around it. So at the end of the line, I think they worked far too much for what they ended up with.
Do you know why she said it was easy to get when clearly it wasn't for her?
She was never like overly concerned with it. So my mom came from a sales world, like my grandpa, my mom's dad, so my grandfather, he was an ice cream man. So I'm originally from Ireland. We immigrated from Ireland to Canada in 89. I'm 40 years old now. So I was just about 6 years old when we came. And my grandpa was an ice cream man. My great grandpa was an ice cream man, and my uncle was an ice cream man. That was they're all, and they would go around, they'd wear suits, and they would like dress in suits all the time. And then they would run the ice cream stand. They drive around the neighborhood, ding, 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 and all the kids would run out. My grandpa was like that. So my mom always knew that salespersonship would always lead to the acquisition of money. So my parents taught me real estate. They taught me, my mom used to, I'll never forget this. So back in the day, used to get checks or cash from the tenants. So my parents moved to Canada. When they moved here, they started building up some real estate stuff, landlords. And I'll never forget my mom, at the beginning of every month, used to get me to count the cash. She used to get me to count her cash. Now, she never gave me any of it, but she used to get me to count it. So she used to always say money's easy to get. And, she was right. And she always had a great attitude around it. But she had a scarcity in her too. Like a scarcity that I think kept her smaller. I think if my mom had some like serious guidance, I think we would have unleashed an absolute beast into the world. My dad, the polar opposite, labor people. And that's where my life went. In my first 15 years of adult life, I was a carpenter. And then at 33, I made a shift.
So he was trading time for money.
Yeah,
There's nothing wrong with that.
Lost it. He was trading time for money. Nothing wrong with that.
So your dad's trading time for money, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I think that's the way we were all taught to do it. Going back to school and what you're taught, they never teach you how to leverage money and to be able to do that, unfortunately. So that's the deal. And it's not surprising because we've had a lot of people, one parent teaches one thing, the other parent teaches the other thing, which is kind of good because I think it gives you then the ability to pick what works for Dave, and how is he going to see these two different viewpoints and what's he going to do with his life. And the other thing that's kind of funny is, do you have siblings?
Yeah, 2 older brothers.
Yeah, so all 3 of you may have a different relationship with money.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. And so that's the other interesting thing. Just because you were X, it wasn't so much the X as much as it was how you internalized it.
Well, a lot of people, I think they get stuck as well in, like in my mind, I've kind of broke it down that there's 3 ways to earn money, right? There's time for money, which is 97% of the world. Then there's money for money. And then there's multiple sources of income, which is kind of like money for money. But I think a lot of people get stuck in the money for money because you got to do something with your life, right? Like we all have to do something. I don't know if anyone outright escapes time for money. You're always giving your time to something, whether you're earning money or not. You're always investing in it every minute of every second. So I think a lot of people, we work really hard, or they work really hard, and they usually are trading their life doing something that maybe they're not completely turned on by. They fell into it. Like when I was 18, when I was 21, I fell into being a carpenter, hated it, got 13 years in that industry and didn't enjoy it at all. But I needed a job at the time. My brother says, "Hey, come down. There's work at the lumber yard. I can get you in." I was like, "Oh, great." So off I go, Next thing I know, I get 13 years. And I think a lot of us, we trade so much of our life for money, and we're stuck in time for money, that then when it comes to the time where maybe we attract an opportunity to leverage it, to invest it, to maybe give it to someone else to invest, we get scared and we hold on very tight to the green stuff because we've traded so much for it. We've sacrificed so much. So it's like, I'm not giving you this money. This 50 grand I've managed to save over the last decade or whatever, I'm not giving you this. Like, I traded my life for this, and I didn't even like what I was doing, what I sacrificed for it. So I think people always have to ask themselves this question: is the amount of money you're earning worth the price you're paying?
I notice many people don't understand the concept of opportunity cost and how big that might be. And I think that's really what the key is. A lot of people just don't realize that. They don't calculate it, they don't put it in the math equation, and then they get stuck paying a massive unrealized cost for what they're doing. And honestly, I think the biggest one that most people face is the cost of inaction. And they just don't realize how big that is.
Yeah, indecision, no good.
So I noticed that, and I'm not sure when this happened, but at some point in your life, you felt there was more to life that you weren't getting. When did that occur?
That was always with me.
Okay.
So even as a youngster, I think I always had a large capacity to love. And later I remember when I heard about a term called a woman's intuition. And when I heard that, I said, I've got one of those. I've got one of those. I've got a woman's intuition. As I was growing up as a child and a kid, so a child, kid, youth, teenager, young man, I always felt like I could see beyond. I didn't know what it was exactly, and I'm not talking like visions or colors or anything like that. I know some people in the world do have those kinds of gifts. For me, I just always knew there was more to us than what we were seeing. And even when I was in high school, I used to get in trouble with certain teachers and even elementary school because I just intuitively didn't trust nor like certain teachers. So I wouldn't listen to them and get in terrible trouble for it. But at the end of the day, I knew that it was like them as a person, like I don't need to follow this person. And that's been a gift. My mom has a heightened intuition as well. I used to get in trouble at school a fair bit as a youth and as a teenager, and never at home. I think until I got married to my wife, I think, and after a few years with my wife, Jacqueline, I think that my mother's the only person on the planet that ever truly understood me.
What was it that she kind of understood, or what was it that everyone else didn't get?
I think she saw the world, and I think my mother saw the world very similar to how I saw the world, from more of a spiritual lens. But I want to be clear about something. I wasn't educated enough in that space to fully grasp what I was dealing with. So I floundered a lot and I suffered a lot right up to the age of 33. When I was 33 years old, I was in really, really rough shape. At 21 years old, there was this little time that I wasn't loving. There was this time where I thought I might have been destined to become a priest. And I felt, well, am I getting called to the priesthood? And I was like, I don't want to be a priest. So what I did was I interviewed, I actually call up Roman Catholic priests, and I would call them. I'd say, hey, can I come see you? I feel like I might be discerning the priesthood or being called to it. And I would go and I meet with the first guy. He didn't give me the answer I wanted. Called up another one, met with another priest. He didn't give me the answers I was looking for. Third priest, I'll never forget him. I forget his name, but I'll never forget him. I was at St. Paul's, a little cathedral in Saskatoon, and I sat down in the back in his den, and I said, "How did you know you wanted to be a priest?" He said, "Oh, I've always known. I've always known I wanted to be a priest." And I was like, "Okay." He's like, "Why? Do you want to be one?" I was like, "No." And he's like, "Well, then you're probably not meant to be one." I said, "Oh, thank you, Father." I said, "Amen. I don't want to be one." And he just released me from that. But that didn't mean I didn't want to endeavor into more spiritual ideas, into the mind. When I was 18 years old, I wound up in a room with Bob Proctor. And anyone that doesn't know who Bob Proctor, my opinion, is, I would call him the original gangsta of law of attraction, the OG. I think he's one of the greatest teachers to ever teach in the world on earth. I think he was so advanced, but he didn't present it in an advanced way. He actually presented a very simple way that I think a large majority of people, I don't think it, I know it because I witnessed it, really missed what he was actually saying. So from the age of 18 to 33, I missed what he was saying. And it's very simple. You are now and you will become what you think about. You are now and you will become what you think about. The problem is that doesn't necessarily help a person change their thinking. So I've always had a strong desire for the spiritual stuff. I've always had a love for the psychological, intellectual stuff, and how all these ideas work in harmony with one another.
So what was the aha? Like, where did it shift? What happened at 33?
Well, I learned two ideas. So I learned one idea called the paradigm. And the paradigm is just simply, it's their belief system. So a paradigm is a multitude of ideas fixed in the subconscious mind or the consciousness of a human being. Also known as a belief system. There's a little word at the end of a lot of words, ism, ISM, Buddhism, Catholicism, capitalism, racism. It's a dogma. It's a structure to that belief system. It's the foundation of it, and it colors that person's life. It literally controls the law of attraction too. And with this ism, as I started to learn about it, so I was spending all this time trying to improve my life, but I wasn't changing the inside. I wasn't looking on the inside. I had a part of my paradigm, work harder, work harder. So by the time I was 33, Rocky, I was working like 60 hours a week, physical labor. I remember I worked 48 hours straight once, 40 hours straight, physical labor, installing a bunch of toilets in a bathroom, like in a kids center. And all that time I missed the memo on the paradigm. The second memo that I missed was the idea around a self-image, that we all have a fixed image. I was in a meeting with Bob Proctor, and in this meeting he very nonchalantly said, I've changed my self-image 4 times. And when I heard him say that, my mind went off like the 4th of July. It was like fireworks going off. And my intuition was like, something big here for you. So I literally interrupted him. I said, well, wait, go, rewind. Like, what did you say there? And then he said, well, when? When you're talking, you're like, I don't know what I just said. You tell me what I just said. I don't know what the hell I said. And I said, you said you changed your self-image 4 times. And he said, yeah, that's right. Now, what he meant by that, 4 full revolutions of Bob Proctor. Now, I've found that a human being can do it way more than that. I think the greatest example in the modern world, and maybe in the history of mankind, is Arnold Schwarzenegger. You take an Austrian boy coming out of the circumstances and situations that he was in, to reinvent himself, to take an image. Who was his mentor? Who was the guy? Who's the first Conan the Barbarian? Bet you there'll be some listeners. Oh, shoot, what's his name? Anyway, saw a picture of him, and then from that built an image of himself doing the same things. Then from Mr. Universe, reinvent himself into an actor, the biggest paid actor in action. And then to stop that again and reinvent himself as a governor. I think if he was allowed, I think he would imagine himself as the president. But he's not American, not allowed to go that far. Right? But 4 full revolutions. And I know on the surface, these things appear easy to other people, or they're like, oh, well, that's just them. Oh, that's Arnold Schwarzenegger. No. You got to understand, you're the same. They just choose differently. And if you listen to Arnold Schwarzenegger, he'll always say this. He's like, you got to have a vision. Got to have a vision. Without a vision, in the Bible, it says, without a vision, the people will perish. As human beings, we need to have an image in our head that is our North Star, because we think in pictures. The root word of imagination is image, and we think in pictures. So for 13 years, I'm trying to create success. For 15 years, I'm trying to create success. And all the time, all I thought it was work harder. I remember I used to take construction project management courses. Then my mind started to go to, become more efficient. Never, ever did anybody ever teach me to change the images in my head until Bob Proctor at 33.
Is this different than reinventing yourself?
No.
Okay.
I would say reinvent, reimagine, refine. I personally love the word refine because it says that you already are in possession of something. You refine things that you already have. If you don't have something, then you have to go get it. You can't refine something you don't have. So I like the word refine because we all have a mind. We're a spiritual being, we have an intellect, and we live in a physical body. We're a spiritual being, we deal with this thing called an imagination. Imagination hooks us into the spiritual world, but also it's hooked into our subconscious, into our paradigm. But it also fights another battle. It's hooked into the physical world. So our imagination is dealing on 3 different points of attack.
All right. So people listening are going to go, this is woo woo. Is it?
No, I think it's very logical.
So help us tie that together. How do we look at this scientifically, logically, rationally?
Well, if we think about ourselves, let's back the bus out. Let's get out of ourselves. Like, we won't be assumptive in our assumptions. So let's back the bus out and let's get logical. The word man comes from the Sanskrit mn, which means distributor or measurement. Mankind distributes thought into the world. For some reason, we receive it, and then we either regurgitate, we recycle it. If we receive from a higher point, we distribute. Every moment of every day, all human beings are doing, you, me, and everyone listening to this podcast, all we're doing is trying to move thoughts from our head into our life. This could be as simple as, I want to get a coffee, I got to go get a haircut. Where does that haircut exist before you actually physically go? Well, it's just a thought. And these thoughts are all controlled by the paradigm. What's acceptable, what's not acceptable. The truth is, you don't have to go get a haircut. You could grow your hair down all the way to your toes if you want, but that would be unacceptable to you based upon your paradigm. But it wouldn't be unacceptable to another guy or a Sikh that's got long hair. It would be the polar opposite for him. So when we start to understand that manifestation is actually that a human being is a manifestation center, all we're ever doing is taking ideas and trying to replicate them in our world. This is what a goal is. What's a goal? A goal is simply an idea that you say, I would really like to have you in my life, not just in my head, not just in my intellect, but in my life, active in my life, in the form of an income, in the form of love, in the form of a family, in the form of friendship, in the form of a car, whatever the hell it is. So it's one of my purposes in life is actually make manifestation logical. So when people say like, oh, woo woo or things like that, you know what? The truth is, I think they're very valid in their negative perception of it, because most people teaching it are teaching something for nothing. People are trying to teach this material, like, in Harry Potter 1, when all the envelopes from Hogwarts start coming through the mailbox, like they're just coming in, the Dudleys can't stop it. That's what most people are like. They think that the money just appears. The money just doesn't appear. The money starts in the form of an idea. If that idea is accepted, what is money? Money is an idea. And the one that can accept the idea is the one that'll have the money. Fail in accepting the idea, you won't have the money.
And it's true, because money's nothing more than a construct. On the back of the bill, it says, in God we trust, right? In a sense. And the world has agreed that the dollar is the reserve currency. We decided for decades or hundreds of years that gold was a store of value. Today, people think that digital currency is a store of value. For a while, they thought digital code, NFTs, were some sort of value. So it comes and goes as to what that is. At the end of the day, and in essence, though, we trade our ideas or our work for money, which is depending on what you're doing, right? When you were building that place and putting in toilets, somebody had a vision of what it was going to look like.
That's
and
right.
They designed it. And lo and behold, it became reality.
Every physical object, this is what I call the thread of desire. Every physical object that is man-made is the manifestation of a desire. You start pulling that thread back enough, you'll find an emotional want, not a general want, an emotional want.
What would be some examples of an emotional want?
So if you sit around your office right now and you just pick one single object, and if you ask yourself, where did that come from? You want to do it with me?
Sure.
Okay. So what object are you looking at?
Well, some things were given to me.
Uh-huh.
Some
Yeah,
things I bought.
okay, pick one. Either one. I don't mind.
So let's go with this wonderful iPhone that I have a love-hate relationship with.
Okay. So you have an iPhone.
Yeah.
Okay. Where'd it come from?
It came from Apple in the store at AT&T
Okay. And why did you go there?
because that was our provider.
Right. But why an iPhone?
Because that's what we've been using, and I loved it. And originally, I got the iPhone because I was using back then the Palm Pilot kind of concept, and
Right.
this was better. At least I felt it was better, and I wanted better.
So could you say that you got that iPhone because you desired an iPhone?
I did desire an iPhone.
Right.
I get
So
very
then,
excited about tech.
that's right. So then let's say that's right. So let's say, well, why didn't you get the Google Pixel or whatever? You're like, well, actually, I think the Google Pixel is better. I actually do desire a Google Pixel, but I don't desire the disruption it's going to cause to my tech ecosystem by switching from iPhone. So they've got you hooked. They designed it like that. Now, where did the iPhone itself come from?
Steve Jobs' imagination, right?
That's right.
Yeah. And he pushed people to go far beyond what they thought was capable.
That's
and
right.
I know if you ask, Steve Jobs created what he believed people wanted, not what people asked for.
Right.
Because they didn't ask for an iPhone. And they didn't ask for a device without a keyboard.
That's right.
So it was a big fight back then.
It's huge. So your iPhone came from your mind. It came from your imagination. The iPhone itself came from his imagination. Even you and I, this is kind of nuts, but you and I, we used to just be a sperm in our dad's testicles. Kind of a crazy ass idea to think, but it's true. We were just a desire in our mom and dad at one moment too. Everything comes from the imagination.
So why do people struggle?
Because they don't know this. I believe the reason I struggled, the reason I believe everybody struggles, I know certainly why I did. I knew so little about myself. I think as human beings, like your question at the beginning is amazing. What did school and your family teach you about money? And I would guess that almost every guest has said nothing or not much when it comes to the school. I think you probably hear all kinds of different answers when it comes to the family stuff. That's the variable. The other ones appears to be a constant. Why does school teach us so little about ourselves? You know, I used to hear a lot of people say, "Oh, Dave, they should teach this stuff that you teach in schools." I said, "Well, sure, yeah, they could." I said, "But I can tell you why they don't." And they ask why. Because your teacher doesn't know.
The reason they don't is because they needed you to be a certain way. I need people to fill this factory. So I need them to show up when the bell rings. I need them to sit down and do their work. I need them to do what they're told. And when I ring the bell, they need to go home. That's what I need. And so I created a system, not me personally, but the powers that be created a system that created people who would do that for them.
A farm.
That's what you want to call it. Sure.
A system.
A system.
Yeah.
It was not always like this.
Well, we'd have to go back a few thousand years to understand why everybody, even in corporations and stuff, you ever notice that corporations they're always trying to get more out of people, and they set these goals and they put these values into them. But it's an impossible battle because they're dealing with human beings, and human beings are spiritual. And the purpose of a goal is to grow. The purpose of a goal is not to get. And you cannot force a goal onto another human being. That human being can accept it and will it, but that doesn't mean they're inspired doing it. So what corporations and just life in general has systematized the spiritual component of a human being out. I personally believe that if there's any personal development programs that don't have a spiritual component, they are significantly inaccurate. Because we are a spiritual being or a universal being. we have an intellect, and we live in a physical body. And this is why people struggle so much, because you literally live on 3 dimensions all at the same time. You live in the 3rd dimension, which is length times width times height. Then everything in your body is on the periodic table, but your mind is not on the periodic table. So how do you deal with that? And the human consciousness cannot compute anything above the 3rd dimension, the 4th dimension being time. So I have a book by Carlo Rovelli on time, and all it is like a few like 12, 13 chapters on him just telling stories, analogies. If you listen in the Bible, what's Jesus saying? He's talking in parables, stories, examples, analogies, metaphors. That's because that's the only way the human mind can pick it up, because the reasoning faculty cannot compute anything above the 3rd dimension. So as human beings, we have this everlasting push to run faster, grow stronger, become richer, become more efficient. We have this drive of efficiency and growth, but we also have this darn mind to deal with that's riddled with garbage. And then we have you got to take care of this physical body. And they're all under strict adherence to universal laws.
You know, sometimes you wonder if it's a conspiracy.
Or try to avoid those.
Or is it somebody trying to hold power? Is it the nature of human beings? Like, how did we stop being spiritual?
The paradigm. Very old. The spiritual paradigm. Human beings have been conditioned to believe that they're not supported.
So how do we break the conditioning?
Education, desire, willingness, understanding. There's only one way to get awareness. This knowledge plus study creates understanding. That understanding will manifest in the belief system in a word known as faith, which is very misunderstood and miseducated. Faith manifests in the body at ease. You can relax when you're in a state of understanding and faith because you know what's coming next. That at ease accelerates and moves a human being into a state of creation. Well, if we're creating the image and likeness of God or our creator, well, what's the MO of the creator? Well, I'd assume is to create.
And so we're designed to create.
Yeah, we're designed to express and distribute. And we can distribute any spirit we like, even bad ones.
And that is very true. Today's episode is sponsored by Profit Answer Man Podcast. Did you know that most small business owners hate looking at their financials? It's one reason they may struggle with business success. The Profit Answer Man podcast helps them ensure they are profitable and can pay their employees and weather the storms we all have to face. It's built on the Profit First methodology of pay yourself first. The Profit Answer Man podcast is a must listen to for every small business owner and anyone who wants to help them survive and thrive. Check it out on your favorite listening platform. You know, it's funny because, and I know you've talked about this, and it's a story that I resonate with, which was Acres of Diamonds. I've always said people don't realize the gold at their feet. Right in front of them, there is so much opportunity, and yet they are blind to it. They don't see it. I know you've worked with a lot of people where you've been able to show them that, haven't you?
Yep, thousands.
So let's talk about that. Like, give us just some examples of those type of situations.
Well, can my mind go back to button up one thought and then we move to that?
We can do whatever you choose.
So I've come to the realization that we're actually all free. Every human being on the planet's free. We're just not aware of it.
Can you define what you mean by free?
Free to select thought.
Yeah, you can think whatever you want.
That's right. Now, physically, we may not be free, but
a lot of people put themselves in a mental prison.
Yeah, and most of it's done through ignorance. I don't think anyone's, outright to blame. It's like I remember Bob Proctor said to me once, he's like, Dave, you're not to blame for your results, but you are responsible for them.
Mm.
There's a big difference there. Different attitude, right? So I think we are all born free. I think we are all born rich. We just have to become aware of it because we're in possession of a mind, which is the greatest power in the universe. Because we've been given the godlike ability to create our own environment. Every other creature on the planet is totally disorientated in their environment. A blade of grass doesn't struggle being a blade of grass. You're not going to go down to a blade of grass and say, "Hey, little blade of grass, how you doing today?" And it's like, "Oh, like shit, man. Oh, it's hot out here today, boy." It's not going to say that, or it's not going to say, "Oh, this buffoon beside me, he grew 2 inches last night. He's blocking me out." Like, he's not going to get jealous. A blade of grass doesn't get jealous.
An animal's not going to do that either.
That's right, because they run by law. You and I have been given a thing called an imagination, a blessing and a curse. We've also been given free will, and we can select our life. So, in the beginning of my career, I used to work with a lot of, I don't want to say it like this, but just for sake of words, weak people, trying to help weak people become strong. And if there's any leaders listening to this podcast today, you're going to know that that is a lot of work. The ideal is when you get someone that comes batteries included and you just direct them, right? What's the easiest thing to manage? Nothing. That's the easiest thing to manage. It doesn't have to be managed. It doesn't exist. Now, the second thing, well, it's the easiest thing to manage, a self-managed person or a self-managed thing. That's the holy grail. So in the beginning of my career, I used to help a lot of weak people who were wanting to become strong, want to break out. Now, why was that happening? Because I was the same. So I was a carpenter earning $5,000 a month. I went down to Los Angeles, California. I just was suffering so bad. I was like, I wonder if Bob Proctor's still doing his thing. Hadn't seen him in like 12 years or something like that. And I went down and I set a goal that was so huge to me. Honest to God, it was like comparable to becoming the Pope. Like, it was huge. And this was the goal: turn $100,000 in a month, to have a 30-day year, to take my annual income, turn into my monthly income. And when I wrote that out, that was the first time that I got a clearly defined goal. And then I started to work with Bob, started to build out images, started to make a clear mental picture. I'm at the place today that I believe if you have a goal and you are not operating the clear mental picture, you are doing yourself a great disservice. Because the subconscious mind, your conscious, actually works on images. So in the beginning, I think I attracted a lot of those people because that's what I was. And as I started to hit that goal, it took me 31 months to cross that one. And then it took me another 3 years after to cross the million a month. As I started to become stronger in myself, I started to attract stronger people. And as I started to track them, I realized that their goals, their problem was always the same. It was goallessness. They got stuck. And sure, they were reading the books on, you got to start with your why, and they're reading productivity books, and they're hungry. Like, they're hungry people. That's why they made the original change. But what happened to them was they ended up creating all this stuff. It's the death of all entrepreneurs, all salespeople too. You create the new world, and then the next thing you know, everything that's created has to be managed. So then now they're not a creator no more. They're not inspired anymore. They're flipping managing all the stuff that they created. And they become depressed. Because I think there's only two state of minds that a human can live in: inspired or uninspired. This would be keeping up with the Joneses would stem from that. You buy the thing, you go out, you do the thing. Next thing you know, you're a slave to the thing. I've popped so many people out of that state, high performers, high achievers, pop them out of that state to recreate, take them out way further. They got to have a vision. Arnold Schwarzenegger is 100% right. The bigger the vision, the more energy you receive. I was at a Q&A down in Los Angeles, California with Bob Proctor, and there's a person in the crowd. It was a lunch that we were having, and there was a person in the audience that asked, "Where do you get all your energy?" He was 85 years old at that time, and his answer was just unbelievable. He said, "Oh, I get all my energy from the images I hold in my mind." In the 10 Commandments, I think, is the second commandment that says, thou shalt not have graven images. It's never been so easy, Rocky, in human history to control the vibration of a human being because of the phone.
Mm.
It's an image box.
It keeps you from yourself. And it also creates images that pull you down, right? You see everybody else having fun in their highlight reel. You don't see what's behind the highlight reel. And it's funny because I'm much more aware of that now. And I refuse to, I've always kind of refused, but now even more so to want to do what everybody else does or to go to the places everyone else goes. I'm like, why are these people doing, like, it doesn't resonate with me and it doesn't make sense with me. Like, if I'm going to go somewhere, I don't care if I take a picture in front of it. I remember being at a concert once and the guy up on stage was like, put your phones down and be here.
Yeah,
right?
Kevin Hart. I went to see Kevin Hart like a year and a half ago, and he took everybody's phone in the arena. Before they went in, you had to put in this lockbox thing. My phone too. Here's a little productivity tip. I was listening to your last episode. I think it was with Jason Silver. Was it Jason Silver, and he was, he sounded like my accountant. Like I was like, is this Blair, my accountant? He was like identical voice. And here's a little thing that I've started to do, and I'm doing it for a long time. You can't phone me. So my phone doesn't ring, it doesn't buzz, it doesn't flash, and it doesn't notify. When I'm going to use that device, I'm going to be the one that uses it. You're going to find that our minds, check this out for people that are listening, you're the one that instigates the rabbit hole because you pick it up.
So my phone's on silent. You can call me, but I don't pay attention to it. I also made it black and white.
Yeah, me too.
So that the color, black and white pictures get boring. You're just not so interested. And it turns, but it also turns down the alerts and the noise, the alerts and everything else. But I still struggle with it because I still want to know, oh, did I miss an email? Oh, did I, what's going on? And so I still struggle. I'm not perfect at all with it,
Yeah.
but I'm learning more and more to let go of it and not to be so tied to it. And I've been doing that considerably more.
If a person took some of that time to sit and just visualize a more wonderful existence, their life would change.
They need one of these.
There you go.
Yeah. My thinking tablet. It's got questions so that I can go think. It's funny because that book over there, at the end of every chapter, he says, now go think.
I always visualize the same thing over and over and over until I replicate it in my physical world.
And so here's where I think people struggle. People go, let me put up a vision board. Okay, that's wonderful. But now you have to go take action. It's not going to show up like those envelopes coming through the Harry Potter thing. You got to go pick up the mail. You have to do something.
You have to have courage.
Is that courage? Is that what that is?
If it's big. And it can start with courage. Courage is the closest vibration to the negative side of human consciousness.
Mm.
So if anyone here has ever read Power versus Force, courage is right on the line. That courage is the virtue that moves a human being from the negative vibrations into the positive vibrations. But it's touching it. It could be 0.00001 could be courage. But you're very vulnerable in courage. You've got to elevate to higher levels. So in early days, it's courage. In the early days, that's what people need. That's why companies hire motivational speakers and stuff.
The courage to make a change.
The courage. It starts with the courage. When a desire meets willingness, you can have some courage.
So you said something earlier that I want to come back to. It's the concept of universal laws. So my simplest example of a universal law is gravity. If I let go of the pen, it's going to fall to the ground because of gravity. And gravity works here, it works on Mars, it works everywhere. Are there certain other universal laws you have found?
Yeah.
I'd love for you to share some of them.
So a lot of my teachings are based upon 7.
Okay.
The 7 universal laws are the law of perpetual transmutation of energy.
Explain that.
This law states that everything's moving from one form into another. The law of conservation of energy would be the same sort of concept. So, for example, let's say you have the sun is beating down on a lake. So that's in liquid form. You add heat to that, that will transmute that water into a steam or an etherical state, pull it up. Eventually, the atmosphere starts to do its thing, makes a cloud, does more of its thing. Then that ether changes its state again, will turn into rain, back into a liquid. Once it's heavier than air, it'll drop. Then that rain falls on some soil. Let's say there's been some grass seed put on that soil. That grass seed now is going to take that H2O, it's going to transmute it into a physical, like a solid form. Then a little bunny comes along, eats that grass, and then it takes that grass, transmutes it into flesh and bone and whatever else. And then that bunny makes a poop. The poop drops on another soil. There's a carrot seed there, turns into a carrot. It's perpetual. That's the perpetual transmutation of energy. Now, what does this law have to do with you and I? Everything. Because human beings are perpetually transmuting thought into the physical world. The problem is we think the physical world is not thought. The physical world is thought. It's just in a different form. So if you take H2O in room temperature, you remove heat from that H2O, it'll turn into ice. It'll turn to a solid. You take those ice cubes, throw them into a pot, turn up the heat, it's going to change the vibration of it, and it'll turn back into a steam. Still H2O, different form. Desire is the heat to a human being's consciousness. So that's perpetual transmutation of energy. The second one is the law of cause and effect. Everything has a cause. Every cause turns into effect, and the two can't be severed. The cause is the effect. Action, reaction, in, out. The third is the law of vibration. Now, a lot of people talk about the law of attraction as if it's a primary law. It is not a primary law, it's a secondary law. The law of attraction is the binding force of the entire universe based upon the vibration of the nucleus. Your thought is the nucleus of your mind, conscious or unconscious, of your life, conscious or unconscious. So the law of vibration is the third. The fourth is the law of relativity. In everything, there's you and there's your environment.
Can you explain that one a little more?
Yeah. So in everything, there's you and then there's your life. So there's you and there's the matter to be dealt with. So here you and I are talking. Why are we talking to each other? Or you see that our conversation has influenced our thinking. Environment is the number one thing that's going to contribute or destroy your goal achievement.
And so that also falls in line with you're the average of the 5 people around you.
Yeah, and people know that intellectually, but they don't do anything about it because they feel guilt.
Okay.
Guilt's a killer. It's a killer.
Before we get to all the killers, let's finish
Okay. All right. So then you got the law of relativity. So in everything, there's you and there's where you are. There's you and there's the matter. There's you and your circumstances, you and your situation. Like you can't get a sunburn if you never go in the sun. Why did a person get a sunburn? From the law of relativity, because they were in the sun. You have a relationship with your environment at all times, and it's influencing you all the time. The next one is the law of polarity. So everything has a polar opposite, up, down, left, right, in, out. And then finally, the law of gender or gestation. Every seed has an incubation or gestation period. So when the masculine meets the feminine, they fuse together and they form new life. So the law of attraction, the law of gestation is the time it takes for that thing, that seed to produce. So we know the timeline of every physical seed in the world. Monsanto knows this, and that's why they play with it. So we know that a baby is 9 months. We know that a wheat seed is 120 days. Like, we know all this now. We didn't always, but we do now. But we do not know the gestation period for non-physical seeds. We do not know the gestation period for ideas. But we do know this, that anything that grows needs energy focused upon it. That's what faith is. Faith is focus. You get one image locked in your mind and you focus on it until you attract all of the energy that reproduces it in physical form. Human beings have been doing this since the dawn. Just that people don't know very much. I know I didn't. That's the 7 laws.
Thank you for sharing. And you mentioned some of the things that go against them. One was clearly guilt. Are there some other things that prevent us from achieving the success or the growth that we want?
Oh yeah, there's some doozies. Oh, I forgot one. The law of rhythm. Everything has a cycle.
Yes. Day,
Okay? Yeah.
rotation.
Yeah, but also with us,
Seasons.
our income, all of it cycles.
Life and death.
That's right. But we're the only creation that can alter the rhythm. We got to disrupt the rhythm with our goals. That's how we do it. Disrupt the paradigm with the goal. Yeah, guilt, fear are the mind killers. Guilt is very interesting. You know, when my income started to go up, in my early days, I was like a year and I was charging $5,000. And I thought I was doing good work. So I thought maybe I was worth a little bit more. I thought maybe I could charge a little more for the good work I was doing. And I attracted this lady who wanted to meet with me for coffee, and she was interested in the mentorship. And my wife, when I left the house to go meet her for coffee, she yelled out, "Know your worth." She said, "You're worth 10,000. You're worth more than 10,000. Know your worth." So I went out that day, and when I was driving there, you know, I'm just using auto suggestion to know my worth. And that day, I said to that lady, she's like, "How much is it?" And I said, 10,000. And she said, "Okay. Do you know that when I received that 10,000, I felt guilt? Because prior to that, I charged everybody else 5."
Wait, why were you guilty though?
You'll find if people look at it, the large majority of people have immense amount of guilt attached to money. A lot of times when you talk to people, if they talk about money, you say, "Well, what would you do with it?" Usually, generally, the first thing they'll do is give it all away.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my experience. I felt guilt to grow, guilt to be what I'm worth. Most people, I think one of the biggest problems we have is we don't know our own worth. And you got to understand, what are you worth? And where did that value come from? Who placed that on you? Because you don't have to accept it, but you do have to address it. When I started to understand this, my income's over 240x.
Interesting.
It's all mental.
And these are the games we have to play.
We have to play. And we need help.
We do.
We do.
All right. Before we close out, I want to shift gears real quick. And it's kind of along those same lines. I know you're a fan of Profit First. And it's funny, people think Profit First is an accounting system. It's not. It's a mental management system. It takes your money, it gives it a purpose, and it takes the emotion out of the purpose. And it's funny because people don't realize this. Most business owners are afraid to pay themselves.
Yep.
And we all hate paying taxes. Okay. But here's the thing. When they implement this system, they're no longer afraid to pay themselves. And they actually feel good when they have to stroke a check for taxes because they have the money ready.
Yeah.
And they realize that they're confident with that. I'd just like to hear your thoughts on what you've learned or how you've done it.
I've read Profit First, and that was probably about 6 years ago now, 5-6 years ago. And implementation's always the challenge, right? So ideally, wouldn't that be something? But I only have this much. In my first 2 years, I invested so heavily in myself. I actually invest over $215,000 into my own head. This is a carpenter earning $60,000 a year. Is that risky? Looking back, it would appear, it would seem risky. I didn't pay my taxes for the first 2 years. Now I live in Canada. So I said, to Trudeau, I was like, sorry, man, I need the money. Charge me the interest. I need this money right now. Like I'm changing my life over here. So I need it way worse than you guys do. But you start to build out habits. And for me, I've boiled it down to 4 habits. The first habit is the habit of increasing your income. I think it's the most vital one to start. And habits are hard to break. The second habit is the habit of saving and investing. The third is the habit of tithing, which isn't just a financial thing, it's actually a spiritual thing. So you don't just want to protect your money, you also want to protect your soul from delusion. And then the fourth is pay your debts. And tax is debt. People don't realize that tax is debt. If you don't pay the IRS or you don't pay CRA, guess what do? They charge you interest and penalties and fees. It's debt. And you're always in debt. So people got to get comfortable with this idea of debt because every time you make $1, you're in debt again. So when it comes to like the philosophy of profit, first 100%, you got to get comfortable. Get out of the rat race that you aren't free. Don't trade these 30 days. This is what everyone's into martyrdom. There's something in the human psyche that loves martyrdom. It's like it hooked on it. Like there's this other book. I hated it. All right. I hated it. It was called The Millionaire Next Door.
Mhm.
I did not like it because I get it. Like I do get it. Like the principles are sound. I get it. 100% you got to do that. But you know what, man? I want to be free. And I think that's what every human being is after. I think they're after freedom.
The whole purpose of building wealth is to have time freedom and the ability to do what you want, when you want, how you want. It's not about the Ferrari. Maybe you want the Ferrari, but it's not about the Ferrari.
No, it's about distributing your desires. It's about being able to manifest. The more money you have, the faster you produce ideas. Because you're not laboring as much. I say money is like an X-lax to goals. Money's like an X-lax to ideas. Because if you got the money, just go get it. But how does a person make that leap when they don't have the money, that they can get to the point that they're free in their head? That leap is the hardest leap for a lot of people.
I call that the 0 to 1 is harder than 1 to 100.
You're 100% right.
You just got to take action. Take the smallest, easiest action.
Build the habit. So for me, what happened was first habit I did for the first 2 years was the habit of increasing my income. I wasn't paying my taxes. I wasn't putting in no buckets. I was like, just increase the damn income. I'd rather save 10% of 100 grand a month than 5 grand a month, like increasing them. Once I stabilized the income ship, once I knew how to start to earn money, then I started implementing the other ideas, buckets for your taxes. I was so scared because I had such bad tax trauma that every day I would pay my taxes, Rocky. Every day I would pay them. And that's what he said. I think he says this, the prof first. When the money comes in, you distribute it.
Yeah.
Boom. Right. So I was receiving money every day and I would literally pay the tax man. Boom, boom, every dollar. By the end of the year, I had no anxiety anymore. And then I started to save and then I started to invest and all the while increasing my income. This process for me, 4 years. 4 years for proper integration, because there's nothing harder than trying to save $1 or $2 when you don't make any. That's the hard leap.
It is. It takes time, takes effort, takes work. You just got to keep showing up and doing it. It's time to learn the secrets of life. What's your secret to living an abundant life?
Control your thinking. Only see life as you want it to be.
And we have that choice. Everyone gets to control their thinking. What did you learn later in life that you wish you would have learned sooner?
The power of image building, and coupled with the power of going the extra mile. Fall in love with the idea of serving people. Fall in love with the idea of improving yourself. Early in my in my journey when I was 33 years old, I was investing in myself because I was trying to take care of myself. I was damaged goods. And at some point, I don't know when this change happened, I stopped investing in myself for me and I started investing in myself for you. Because I had people help me. I had Bob Proctor help me. I had another man named Doug help me. I had another woman named Jane help me. Another man named Arash helped me. And it was because these people were very good at what they did that I started to have changes because of the changes they'd made for themselves.
And the real secret is when you help others, you're actually helping yourself more.
It's a great way to live.
If you were to give an 18-year-old one specific piece of wisdom, what would it be?
Get a goal.
Yeah, that would be better than getting a high school diploma. Here, figure out your goals. Write them down.
Make sure that goal isn't getting a high school diploma.
There's that.
The mothers will be not enjoying this one.
Well.
That's their problem, not ours.
If people would like to learn more about you, follow your work, what is the best way for them to do that?
Go to www.conway.consulting. So www.conway.consulting and or punch in Conway Consulting on Instagram as well.
And we will put that into the show notes. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Rocky. Oh, pleasure. I was thrilled to be on this one.
So are you like David was at 18 or me at so many points in my life? You know there's more. You want more, but you haven't figured it out yet. Having clarity of purpose and focus and seeing the outcome is the path forward. You still have to do the work. It takes time and effort. This is not magical exactly, and yet it is. So what are you going to do differently? By the way, who do you know who would benefit from listening to today's episode? Would you do me a favor and share it with them? I would appreciate that, and thank you for doing so. Next week, we've got Krista Camarillo on to talk about cultivating resilience, how to keep showing up. Thanks for listening. Have an abundant week.